of the Master. All right, so this week, the words of the Master is entitled Yeshua Walks on Water. We're going to look at Matthew. The text is from Matthew 14, 22, and 33, Mark 6, 45 through 52, and John 6, 14 through 21. And, as always, when we deal with the words of the Master, we're going through the New Testament, the Gospel specifically, and dealing with the places where Messiah actually spoke. If you have a red letter Bible, these are all the places that have those red letters there. And we're kind of going through from beginning to end and joining all of the instances of the Gospels together. So here we're looking at the time when Yeshua walked on water. That account is given to us in Matthew, Mark, and John. And we'll read Matthew's version, and we can refer to Mark and John for added information. But I wanted to go ahead and look at Matthew's version and go ahead and read. It's interesting, again, the same thing kind of that we looked at last week when, again, we look at this, I have got this structure from a book called, what's that book called? The Harmony of the Gospels. And so it puts all of the instances together, but when you look at some of them, of course, some of them are just talking about what Yeshua did and not necessarily what he said. And so interestingly enough, this week, there's a small portion that's skipped over because of the fact that Yeshua doesn't speak. It's just kind of the in-between from last week, whenever he fed the 5,000. As always, Yeshua gets into these situations. He's dealing with doing all these miracles, and then you can't really perform fantastical things and expect for people to just be like, all right, this is the end, let's go home now. There's always kind of this lingering and staying kind of a situation. If you remember, even then, at that time, the disciples were coming back from going off and, splitting up and performing miracles on their own. And so Yeshua comes back, he's weary, he's ready to rest. The disciples come back, they're weary, they're ready to rest. But you got all these people here. So then we have that miracle that they perform with the feeding of the 5,000, and now finally they get to the place where Yeshua is like, all right, y'all go ahead, the disciples. Let's read it. Let's read Matthew 14, 22 through 33.
And immediately Yeshua made his top ones enter into the boat and go before him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowds. And having dismissed the crowds, he went up to the mountain by himself to pray. And when evening had come, he was alone there. But the boat was now in the middle of the sea, agitated by the waves, for the wind was against it. And in the fourth watch of the night, Yeshua went to them, walking on the sea. And when the top ones saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, "Is it a phantom?" And from fear they cried. But immediately Yeshua spoke to them, saying, "Take courage, it is I, do not be afraid." And Kepha answered him and said, "Master, is it you? Command me to come to you on the water." And he said, "Come." And when Kepha had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Yeshua. But when he saw that the wind was strong, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried out, saying, Master, save me. And immediately Yeshua stretched out his hand and took hold of him and said to him, O you of little belief, why do you doubt? And when they came into the boat, the wind ceased. And those in the boat came and did bow to him, saying, Truly, you are the Son of Elohim.
Okay, very good. So, again, when we think about the timing, what's going on here, they just got finished with the feeding of the 5,000. The people are still there, and Yeshua, takes this opportunity to say to his disciples, y'all go ahead, get on this boat, go ahead, they'll be on the boat, they'll have that time of seclusion between between there and the other side. They'll be able to rest. Yeshua, of course, must know that there's a storm that's brewing. He's obviously preparing them for another test. Imagine, it seems like Yeshua's always, he tests his, they're disciples. They're supposed to be learning. They're supposed to be growing. They're supposed to be tested. And so I don't feel sorry for them. I'm just saying, this is what that is. But it's also, at the same time, there's a time for them to be able to, recuperate, because that's what he does. Yeshua, at this time, he sends the people away, dismisses the crowds. He goes up into the mountains and he prays there. And so it's interesting when we look at let's think about the fact, we talked about this some on the last week, because again, we see that Yeshua tried before to rest and pray, but he wasn't able to. And so he had to keep on going. The people, he was tired, but the people, they needed to, they needed him, right? He was needed at that time. However, Yeshua is at this time in flesh. I want to look at, let's go over to Hebrews 4 and 15. Hebrews 4 and 15.
Hebrews 4 verse 15. For we do not have a high priest unable to sympathize with our weakness, but one who was tried in all respects as we are, apart from sin.
Okay, very good. So when we think about Messiah, Yeshua, our high priest, he is in fact able to sympathize with us in regards to our weaknesses, which is our flesh, which is our carnality. He's able to have sympathy. He's able to relate in the fact that he, in fact, walked in flesh. And we talked about last week the fact that when we think about the weaknesses of the flesh is weak. Yeshua said the spirit is willing and the flesh is weak. But we also talked about the fact that when we say that the flesh is weak, we're saying that the flesh is weak spiritually, because the flesh is actually strong. Right? It's kind of it's a dichotomy, right? This flesh is weak if you're thinking about it from a spiritual perspective, because it's the exact opposite. It's carnality. But from a physical standpoint, the flesh is strong. Your carnal mind is strong. You have physical carnal desires that are going to exist. And so from that regard, the flesh is strong. And it becomes a necessity for you to battle against the flesh. If the flesh was weak from a physical standpoint, what's the battle about? What is it that you have to cause to die daily? Your weak flesh. Like if you have a adversary that's weak, it's not really an adversary. Like you form no threat to me if I understand that you're weak and I'm stronger than you. But the flesh can be, in fact, a formidable opponent. And
I
so,
think that's most people. That's their biggest enemy. That's your biggest enemy. Your own flesh.
I mean, that's our reality. We deal in this carnality, and we got to deal with things that we can touch, that we can see, that we can hear, that we can taste, you know, and deal with our senses. And these become our weaknesses, the things that we deal with from a physical standpoint. And so the spirit within us is willing to do whatever it is that the Most High will have for us to do. But because of the fact that our physicalness, our physical body is weak spiritually, our body don't want to do those things.
Nope.
And so it fights against. And so in this situation, Yeshua's body is tired. And he's I can't deal with y'all people no more. Y'all got to get out of here. And I'm going to go up here and recharge. As a matter of fact, y'all disciples, y'all get out of here too. Y'all go ahead on. Go ahead, get on that boat. Get out of here. I'll take care of these guys. Because he has to reset his body. But again, we look at Hebrews. He's able to understand the one thing that I remember from when I was going up to the penitentiary, when we dealt with, I kind of had like waves of people, and I kind of had like almost like a fresh class, and it's like they see you only in a particular setting, which was when I went there. But it was necessary for them to kind of understand me as a person to kind of even accept whatever it was that I had to say.
Yep.
It's like people want to be able to identify with you, and they want to know that you're able to identify with them as on some level in order to be able to even accept whatever it is that you have to say. If I'm some person, I'm going to try and tell you this or that, and then I never had to deal with that. How you going to sit up here and tell me that I need to not be doing that when you don't know my struggle?
Yeah.
That's how people are. But Hebrews is telling us that we don't have a high priest that's unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, because he dealt with the same physical issues that we deal with. He in his body was in fact tired. And so we see an example of this when he goes to the mountain. It says, and he was alone and he prayed there. Now, it's interesting to look, if we go back to Matthew, let's kind of look at to see if we could figure out some timing here. Because when we look at verse 23, he dismisses the crowd. He dismisses the crowd. It says, and when evening come, he's alone in the mountain. And then by the time we get to 25, it says, and the fourth watch of the night, Yeshua goes to them in the sea. And so the fourth watch is between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. And the first watch is between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. So Erev, if it says that it's evening, it was evening by the time he gets to the mountain. That's evening. It's around the first watch, somewhere in the first watch, which would be 6 to 9 p.m. Like this, about sunset. By the time Yeshua goes to meet them, by the way, if we go to, let's go over to John. Let's go over to John. Let's go over to John. Let's read what happens in John. If we look at John chapter 6, read 17 to 19. John 6, 17 through 19.
And entering into the boat, they were going over the sea towards Capernaum, and it had already become dark, and Yeshua had not yet come to them. But the sea was rising because a great wind was blowing. 19, right?
Yeah.
And they had rowed about 25 or 30 stadia. They saw Yeshua walking on the sea, and coming near the boat, they were afraid.
Okay, very good. So we go over to John to find out that they're on a boat. They might have a sail on the boat, but it's windy. And so if you're dealing with the sail, then you're going to go wherever the wind is taking you. So they're not using the sail necessarily. They're using the row. They're rowing it. And so they're rowing in this rough water, which is difficult for 3 to 4 miles. And I remember we talked before, the Sea of Galilee, the width, I can't remember how wide it is. I want to say 6 miles maybe.
Yeah, something like that.
I can't remember what it was. I looked at it. It was I think it was like 6 miles wide from one side to the other. I could be mistaken. But the point, eight miles wide. And so they're only able to get halfway across because of the way that the wind is going. But I'm saying all that to say, if we go back to Matthew, Yeshua gets to where he's going to be at by evening time. And he don't meet up with the disciples until the fourth watch. It's basically, it's almost morning time. And so he's able to go and do whatever. He probably, got his prayers in. He probably got a good little power nap in. And then he goes, there's time that goes by, right? From somewhere between 6 and 9, all the way up until somewhere between 3 and 6 in the morning. And so, basically we see that Yeshua was able to, if not most or all, he was able to pray all night as his disciples went and traveled across this situation.
They were struggling and he was praying and relaxing.
When you think about what that is, it's gotta be a test for the disciples, because they didn't have an easy road. They was able to get away from the people that was there, but they're not able to rest. They're definitely not able to rest. All right, so let's keep on going. So let's look over here. So we see that the disciples, if we look, read again now, verse 26 in Matthew 14.
And when the top ones saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, "It is a phantom." And from fear they cried.
Yes. Okay, so the disciples at this time, they're troubled. They're frightened. They don't know what's going on. They see, the text tells us that they see him, But I feel like the text is telling us that they see him, but they're not sure what they're seeing.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that because if I see a man walking on the water, I'm not gonna be like, oh, look at that man walking on the water. Like it's not like it's not like a thing that you would see. Like,
Yeah.
if I see someone that I know is deceased, say, walking down the street, I might say, well, that guy looks just like so and so. I won't think that it is so and so because I know that he's deceased. And so in their minds, they have to be looking like that. I know that's not Yeshua that I see over there. So it must be, what do they say, a phantom.
A phantom, yeah. Which is just King James Version says a spirit.
A spirit. They're quicker to say that it's a spirit faster than they are to say that it's like a person because he's on the water.
But it was a spirit, though.
Well,
I mean,
that's not a lie. But it was a man though.
yeah. They didn't know what they did. They didn't know.
They didn't know what they was looking at. But it's interesting. It's interesting when you think about the people at the time. When you look at some of the thought processes that the people of that time might have had, it's interesting that they say when they look and see that it might be a spirit, because they kind of had these superstitions and thoughts about things where that spirits or demons or these entities visit people at nighttime. And so, but not only that, but if you was to see one of these night spirits, you most definitely wasn't supposed to speak to it or salute it at nighttime. And so they had this thing where it was kind of forbidden for them to salute a friend at night if he was unclear if it was the friend, because it could actually have been a spirit. And so they don't know who that is. They're frightened. It says they're literally frightened, which, I mean, they should be. They see a man on the water. And so it's interesting when you look at some of the rabbinic writings, when they bring up this idea of spirits in the night, they go over to Joshua. They go over to Joshua. Read Joshua 5, because it's interesting. They have a whole kind of a thing where they're talking about the subject matter is what's more important, Torah study or temple service, is kind of the conversation between the rabbis. But in order to get to that end, they go to this situation that happens in Joshua, and it kind of corresponds with this idea of night spirits. But look at Joshua, and it corresponds with what we see with the disciples and Yeshua on the water. But look at Joshua 5, 13 and 14.
And it came to be when Yehoshua was by Yethro, that he lifted his eyes and looked and saw a man standing opposite him with his sword drawn in his hand. And Yehoshua went to him and said to him, "Are you for us or for our adversaries?" And he said, "No, for I have now come as captain of the hosts of Yahweh." And Yehoshua fell to his face to the earth and did obeisance, and said to him, What is my master saying to his servant?
Okay, very good. So now, when they look at this, the argument now that they begin to make is, how is it that Joshua does this, in terms of how does he speak to this vision spirit thing in the night? Well, they don't know if it's night. He's unrecognizable to him necessarily. He stands. The verse says that he goes to him, but it's interesting that if he's standing, the text says that if the man stood over against him with his sword drawn. And so I'm not sure how, if someone's standing over against you with their sword drawn, how far then do I have to go over to you? Because it does say he went to him, but how far did he go if he's already standing over against him? So there's that. But when you look now, so they're asking, they say, it is prohibited for a person to greet his fellow at night if he does not recognize him, as we are concerned that perhaps it could be a demon. So how did Joshua know that it wasn't? And so then they go on to say it was different, as the visitor said to him, I am the captain of hosts unto Yahweh. So the only thing really that Joshua says to this, what turns out to be an angel, is like, do I gotta fight? Or is everything all right? Because it says that he's over him with the sword. And so they bring that up, and then just for us to have an understanding as to the thought process of this whole idea of speaking with these unknown characters in what could be, in fact, the night. And so when we think about the disciples on the boat, where they, it says, are afraid. They don't know what's going on. They understand the spirit realm. They just got finished casting out demons out of these people from where they was at. And so the idea of there being, they witnessed Yeshua do it. They went and did it. And so they understand this idea of, spiritual things going on, but they clearly don't know if that's Messiah or not. They don't know. And so they're frightened. And so if we go back now, if we go over here and look at 27, read 20, back to Matthew again, read verse 27.
But immediately Yeshua spoke to them, saying, take courage, it is I, do not be afraid.
Yeshua has to reassure the disciples that, and again, it's not morning. It could be close to morning, so they can't really see who is there. You probably can't hear very well either. You know, where I'm working at now, there's always rushing water. It's nasty. It's nasty water, but it's rushing. It's rushing water where it's loud. And so imagine being on a boat that there's wind and waves. And so if someone's speaking, you might not necessarily know their voice necessarily above the sounds that are going on. And so again, they don't know that they can't probably see him that well either. I mean, if they was able to see him, that'd be one thing. Then what would they be scared of besides the fact that he's walking on water? They've already seen him do other things that are pretty fantastical, where I feel like if they knew that it was Yeshua that they was looking at, they're like, man, this guy,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
he be doing all kind of stuff.
Yeah, like what's his next thing? You know?
What else is he going to do? Now he's walking on water. But they can't tell if it's him or not. And so Yeshua says, it's okay. Be of good cheer. Be encouraged. It's me. It is I, he said. Don't be afraid. And so it was necessary for Yeshua to let them know that what was happening wasn't a situation where they needed to be afraid. He wasn't a spirit. He wasn't a demon. He was Yeshua. And so even still then, if we look at verse 28, read verse 28 again.
And Kepha answered him and said, Master, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water.
He's still not sure though. He heard Yeshua say, it's me. It is I. Don't be afraid. But Peter out of the rest of them, I'm sure the rest of Peter's the one who speaks up. But he's still not sure. If it's you, if that really is you, let me come out there with you. So he's not completely sure yet. He needs a little more proof that this is in fact Yeshua. And he's kind of tests Yeshua. But he trusts him at the same time. He trusts him and he's testing him at the same time because it's necessary for him he got to step out the boat.
Yeah.
And so if it step out the boat and it's not Yeshua, then what? Right? So he's operating in faith in one breath, but it could be a huge mistake if it's not who he thinks that it is. Right? And so it's interesting that we see Peter's reaction where he's asking, is it you? But if it is you, let me come out on the water. Bid me. What's that word? What's that say there in the Greek? Bid me come unto you. He wants Yeshua to say that he could come out. And that's what happens, right? Yeshua says, come. And then when he hears that, that's all he needs. Right? In verse 29, Yeshua says, come. And then Peter gets off the boat. And so it's interesting when we look at the disciples, because the thing came up, I think it was last week when we was thinking about some of the things that the disciples up to this point, what they've experienced. And we was thinking about the fact that because of all that they've seen the master do, and because of what the master has allowed for them to even do, I was saying that I feel like they're at the place where it don't matter what it is that the Most High, that the Master Yeshua would say to them at this point, they would do it.
That was with the food, and he said, "Give me the."
Oh yeah, we was talking about passing the food out.
Passing food out.
I got 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes, and the master say pass it out. I'm not gonna sit up there and be like, well, I only got 5 loaves and 2 fishes. I'm just gonna pass it out. And so when Peter says to the Messiah, he says to the Master Yeshua, if that's you, tell me to come and I'll come. I feel like that's in that category where whatever it is that the Messiah says, he's going to do it. And that's what happened. He just needed to hear the words be spoken by Yeshua, and then he went and does it. He steps out and does the impossible. He does the miraculous. He walks on water. He said he walked on water, and he goes to Yeshua. And it's not even like it's calm water either.
Yeah.
Like it's stormy water.
Say the wind was strong.
I mean, I don't like heights, and I got to work with heights a lot in my job. We're in the middle of making these tanks, these huge tanks. They have water, and there's grading. There's like grading, like how on that radiator there's like grading on top, and so there's grading over top of the tank, and you can walk on it, but you can also see underneath it. And like I know that I can't fall through it, but I don't want to walk on it necessarily.
What's underneath? It's nasty.
It's a tank of nasty water, yes. And if it's clean water, I don't want to fall through it. I don't want to fall in the tank. I know that I can't fall because this thing is protecting me, but in my mind, I don't want to do it. And I'm just thinking about the idea of understanding that I'm safe, and yet I'm still reluctant to move, even though I know that I'm still safe.
Yeah.
And so Peter don't got nothing underneath of him to give him the idea of safety, except for the fact that Yeshua's over there and he said, come. He don't have like Yeshua didn't make like this mystical board or boat come underneath him here. Just walk in this straight line here on this hard stuff right here, and you'll be good. The only thing that Peter has is the fact that Messiah said, come. But that's all that he needed, though. Because it said that he got down off of the boat and he walked on the water over to Yeshua. Which is pretty amazing. Because when I think about it, I'm not really sure how I would fare right here with this situation.
Can't say nothing about Peter, man.
Peter he wasn't afraid. He wasn't afraid of it. There wasn't a lot of things that he was afraid of.
I won't begin to let me.
Just not, I mean, even if you say that he's kind of what's it called whenever you kind of do things, just kind of, what? What? Yeah, that's good. Go with the flow. Peter's go with the flow. He's ready. Like he does it. Right? He moves. Like when we see that when the guy comes and he's ready to capture Messiah, he's ready to chop his head off. He's ready to go with the flow. Right? Right? Instinctual.
Yeah.
Right? Is what I'm thinking about. Not necessarily thinking about things much. Beside the fact that Yeshua said come, and then he goes. And so when he's able to only just concentrate on what the master has said, come, and he goes, he's fine. But read verse 30 right there was us.
But when he saw that the wind was strong, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried out, saying, Master, save me.
Now let me just say, the wind was already blowing.
Yeah.
It didn't start to blow when he got out the boat. The wind was blowing the whole time they got in the boat. However, his focus shifts from away from the master in onto the wind and the waves. And that's when he sinks.
He began to sink.
It didn't even say he all the way sunk. He just begins to sink.
That same what's the word? Emotion or whenever it caused him to jump out the boat, he started to lose that same zeal or whatever. started to fade as he got distracted.
Yeah, I mean, it most definitely is. That's what it was. It was distraction, right? Because when he's able to focus on the master, he walks on the water. The wind didn't just start whenever he got out. It was already going, but he's not focused on the wind and the waves. He's focused on the master. But when he gets distracted from that, now he begins to. But it's even interesting when you think about the idea of him sinking, and then he's asking for help from the master. Why can't you just focus then on what you focused on before? Nothing never changed. Yeshua he don't say nothing else besides come. And so he always wanted for him to come. What's the difference? The difference ain't the master, the difference is him.
And the thing was, if you think about it, he became afraid. Because in verse 28, he said, Master, if it's you, he said, command me to come to you on the water. He didn't say, can I come out to you? Or, no, he said, command me to do it.
Yeah.
And then Yeshua was like, okay, come. All right, come.
Yeah.
And my thing is, would Yeshua have put him in danger?
I mean, from a logical perspective, we thinking about that. No, he wouldn't,
But he said, come. So what you got to be afraid of if the master said, come now?
nothing. But again, he's not focusing on the right things, right? He's not focusing on the master anymore. He's focusing on his situation. He's focusing on his circumstances. He's focusing on the things, by the way, that was the same way when he started as what they was right now. It wasn't even like they got worse.
I mean, he experienced probably trying to row that boat.
That was right harder than it was to get out of the boats, and they're trying to row it in a particular way. Keep the boat. I was just on that little paddle boat out there because we was thinking about that picture that they put in the thing.
Yeah.
I'm in that paddle boat at first trying to figure out how to move the way that I want to go with the oars on calm water. But imagine being in rough water, and then you got all these people that's rowing at the same time, probably trying to move all in one direction. I'm saying all of that they was going through had to have been harder than him just stepping off of the boat.
Yep.
But again, when he switched his focus away from the master and onto what was going on, the situation and his circumstances, now he begins to sink. And then what's the master say there in verse 31?
And immediately Yeshua stretched out his hand and took hold of him and said to him, "Oh, you of little belief, why did you doubt?"
I just want to say, I don't know how far Yeshua was, but he was far enough where he wasn't visible necessarily. He was speaking out, and they didn't know that if it was him necessarily. But when this happens, all they got to do is reach his hand down and grab him. I'm saying Peter got a good ways out of that water before things got sketchy for him.
Or are they walking towards each other?
I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know, closing in.
Maybe he's like running, trying to hurry up
Stretched out his hand.
and get there. But the issue here, what Yeshua says, you of little faith. Wherefore did you doubt? And so again, when we think about what's happening, it causes us to be able to learn this lesson here. When we look at this, and it shows us, first of all, we have to know Yeshua. We have to be able to know his voice. Peter, before he understood who it was that was over there, he was frozen. He wasn't able to do anything. It was fear. But once he was able to understand that that was Yeshua, now he's able to go and then trust in his word. And so we have to be able to get into a situation where we're able to hear, not only hear from Messiah, but also be able to trust in the words that we're hearing from Messiah. And then not only trusting in the words, but not allowing for our situations and circumstances to interfere with what it is that the Master has already said that he was going to do.
Yep.
Now, how many times does the Master say that he's going to do this and that for you? He's going to make this or that happen. And in the midst of that, moving forward, adversity happens. And now we're looking at the adversity instead of what is that Messiah already said he was going to do.
Yep.
If I'm on my way to the destination and I get a flat tire, am I supposed to turn around and go back home because I got a flat tire? Or am I supposed to continue and go and do whatever it is that I'm doing in spite of the fact that I'm facing adversity on the way?
Yep.
Peter over here, he begins to acknowledge the adversity that he's already dealing with as if he wasn't dealing with it already. And so he raises that adversity to idol status. He put that thing above the word of the Master. Yeshua said, come. If Yeshua said come, then there ain't nothing that should be said or happen that goes above whatever it is that the Master has said. And so Peter here is chastised by the Master, and I'm saying that it helps for us to be able to understand that that which the Master has called for you to be doing, you need to be doing that in spite of adversity. Because adversity is, is a baseline. You begin with adversity. It's going to be problems. However,
it don't matter what. And once you solve one problem, the next one's getting ready.
yeah, it just ain't happened yet.
Yeah. You ain't going to solve all your issues. That's the point. You gotta, as long as the adversity don't stop you from breathing, you keep going.
That's some serious adversity, right?
Yeah.
But that's the truth, though, right? If and I always say this: if your life is peaches and cream, then you're living in gross iniquity.
Definitely.
If you ain't got no adversity, you doing something wrong.
Right.
That's what this existence is. This existence is wind that's boisterous and waves.
Yeah.
But it cannot stop us from moving in the direction that the Master is calling for us to be moving in. And we have to be about the Master's business in spite of the adversity. And I think that's what the Master is showing us through this thing that happens over here. And so notice when we look over here, when they get in the boat, that's when the waves stop. Not when they come together, but when they get all the way in the boat, it stops. And then 33 is kind of interesting to me because it seems like the disciples get to the same place that you would think that they was already there already, but we see it multiple times. Read 33 again for us.
And those in the boat came and did bow to him, saying, truly you are the Son of Elohim.
Now they get it. Now they get it. I mean, he done already did something kind of like this before when they was when they was, on the boat and he calmed the sea while he was asleep. I mean, it already caused blind people to see, deaf people to hear, dumb people to speak, lepers to not be lepers anymore. Did I say raise people from the dead already?
Yeah.
All of these things that he's already done.
But you gotta think. I mean, if somebody keep outdoing themselves,
I mean,
you gotta. It's hard to not. Look, I'd be just like them.
I'm not saying
Come
that they
on.
shouldn't have did what they did, but I'm talking about the realization of who he is.
Yeah.
I'm saying they should have been knew that already.
I think they knew that. It's just like
they just affirming it.
Yeah, you just gotta say it again.
Okay.
They probably said it multiple times, but it's like this is the son of Elohim right here. This is crazy. You know,
They just bearing witness to what's already been said.
that's what I would think.
I like that better than the new realization, because they at this point they've been through too much. Because all of the things that they seen the master do, he empowered them to go do it, and then they did it.
They went out.
Yep. Yep.
And so they come to this realization. They see, they affirm and bear witness to the fact that he is in fact the son of Elohim. But to say that, it deals with the idea of this lineage that Yeshua belongs to, where he shares in the essence and power of the Almighty. He speaks to the wind and it stops.
Yeah.
He defies gravity. I don't know what he did. I don't know what Yeshua does to walk on water. Does he manipulate the mass of his body? Does he cause for his body to now be lighter than water so that he could float on it?
Probably all that.
Make the water harder.
I know. What's he doing?
Make icicles.
I don't know. He's whatever he did, only the Most High is able to do that. And that's the conclusion that they come to. Whatever it is that caused you to be able to walk over here to speak to Peter, and he walked over there, and y'all came both walked back, you got to be the son of Elohim.
And see, the deep thing is that Peter, because he believed, he was able to do it too.
Yeah.
It was Peter's belief that caused him to be able to walk on the water. When he stopped believing, he started sinking. So that you gotta keep that in mind too.
Yeah. Right. And so this whole thing, he's teaching us these multiple, multifaceted situations where we're learning about faith. We're learning about the power of Messiah, the necessity to maintain that faith, because the same faith needs to be maintained in order to keep going.
That's right.
When you have an initial faith, and then when you think about the idea of once saved, always saved. We see right here, Peter's initial faith wasn't enough to keep him safe.
Yep.
He needed to maintain, he needed to be at least at the same level of faith that he was at when he started to continue. And when he decreased, however little, it wasn't total decrease because he began to sink. But he wasn't at the level of faith that he began, and he begins to sink. And so it helps us to understand that we begin with a level of faith. But we can't have a lesser amount of faith and think that we're going to make it to the master. Go ahead.
I was thinking about 1 Peter 4 verse 18.
Put that up on the thing. That's saying.
And it's the
4 and 18.
1 Peter 4 verse 18. And if the righteous scarcely be saved, where shall the ungodly and sinner be? And just thinking about the amount of belief, that it takes to, to be saved and continue in that, to make it to the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Peter, Yeshua says, of ye of little faith, but like, he had the most faith of all his disciples.
Yeah.
Because none of them was like, what are we doing out there?
I know why they all wasn't jumping off of the boat.
Peter was a
I bet somebody grabbed this shirt like, hold on, Peter, what you doing?
Yeah.
Somebody grabbed you and tried to stop you from getting off of the boat. But that's true. Like this life that we live is a journey, and it's necessary for us to be strong and courageous. It's necessary for us to not kind of get lackadaisical about ourselves and think that we're just going to cruise control through this situation, because there's going to be at least the same, if not more, pressure against you from the time that you started, going forward. And it's necessary for us, and the thing that they end up with in terms of understanding that Yeshua is in fact the Son of Elohim, verifying within themselves and understanding the thing that helps, that ensures that they are able to move forward is understanding who Messiah is, where he comes from, how he relates to us, and all of the things that he does for us. And when we're able to walk in faith in the Messiah, there's nothing that we're not able to do, especially specifically the things that he's calling for us to be doing. And so we should be able to look at things like this and understand that when we move forward in faith, faith in Messiah, faith in the path that he has put us on, he's not going to put us in a particular direction for us to fall. In fact, what he's actually going to do is to supply us with all that we need in order to get to the place that he's calling for us to be at. But it's necessary for us to continue and walk in faith. All right, so that being said, does anybody have any thoughts, questions, comments? Go ahead.
So, while listening to you, I try to come up with a thought. I thought of Peter as an infant just learning how to walk. And the goal is the mother. So the baby first gets up and says, "Ooh, I got balance." Mommy's right there. She puts her hands out, and so the baby says, "I think I can take it." And the baby takes the first couple of steps, feeling good, and then it starts to walk and say, "Oh, I'm falling. I don't think I'm gonna make it." So then it decides, like, I'm just gonna fall. So, like you're saying, that at that point, the strength of once I got that stance, I feel good. I'm gonna make it a mom because she's gone. I can do it. But my question is to myself, like, why does the baby doubt itself that it can make it?
And
It's the same thing.
when you think about it from that perspective, right, it's also muscles too, right?
Right.
Like if you never use those particular muscles, they're not going to probably work right. Like the potential for walking is there in the baby, but he never did it. They don't know how to balance. You don't think about the fact that like your whole body is involved really in these things. And so when you begin, you start doing this, you're wobbly, you don't have balance. And then soon it becomes balanced, and we do these miraculous, wondrous things unconsciously. We don't think about it, that there's a lot going on with just walking.
Yep. That's
Like if your neck is messed up, it could mess up how you walk.
Yeah, how you want. Yep.
And it don't got nothing to do with your feet, you would think, but your whole situation is connected to each other, and everything's involved. Like you move your arms and everything else, your core and all of these other things is involved in walking.
Yeah.
And so you have to build these things up.
Yeah.
And so when you think about walking in faith, you walk in a little bit of faith, and then this got me over here. And whatever that is, you can go to the next situation. I was able to do this, maybe I can do more than that. And so it's the same situation, and it's building on itself. And that's why we think about the idea of, increasing in faith, because, just like when you talk about the idea of starting off as a child, when now you're doing these things where you don't even think about it anymore. And so those things that you had to, the baby has to really concentrate and think about just moving just from just a couple feet. But now, once you've able to master that thing, what's next now? Right? You could run, right? Or many other things. And so when we think about our life in Messiah, where we're on this journey to make it to, the promise. We all have a grand promise, the kingdom, but the Most High has things for us to be doing as individuals. And so we're led along this path where we learn these various lessons that helps us to get to where we're going, and everything's building on itself. And so again, when we look at this, we see that it's necessary for that initial thing to be maintained and then even increased in order to move forward. So it's a growing kind of a thing that has to happen in this walk.
I was just wanted to add to that what happened with Peter was he took his eyes off of Yeshua and started looking around at the wind and the storms and whatnot. And so we have a tendency to start looking at whatever our problem is instead of just focusing on the master. You know what I mean? As soon as you take your eyes off the master, that's when the doubt sets in. That's when the fear sets in. So the key is to keep your eyes focused on the master.
Kind of wanted to go back to when you were saying your life is all peaches and cream. In your it kind of reminds me of this quote I heard one time from Denzel. He said, maybe if you are doing something, he said, I'm trying to remember about ruining it because it was really stuck with me. He said, if you're doing something good, then you're basically not the devil likes you. I mean, devil doesn't like you. But I'm paraphrasing because I'm not trying to word it. But the devil doesn't like you if you're doing something good. If you're doing something you just off, then he's like, I don't like you. That's my man right there.
And that's exactly right. We live in this place where the God of this earth is with us. And so if you're not walking on the Most High's path, then you're going along with this world's program. And so then you'll probably succeed in this system because then there won't be any resistance because you're going along with that program. But we live in this world and we're counter culture. The world's going that way, but we're going the other way. It's going left and we're going right.
You gotta think. If wicked people love you, are you being righteous?
Can't be. You can't be. You must be wicked.
You gotta always remember that. For a whole bunch of people, like if you're being righteous and people don't like you because you're righteous and seeking after righteousness, and you got friends that's doing all these other things, are you representing righteousness?
Can't be.
Why do they like you? Why do they say? Go ahead, Dre.
I wonder, I was interested in the point you brought up about the timeline. That timeline at night, you know, the elders just always say, well, if you wake up at 3 in the morning, you better pray. That's the time you're supposed to pray. I heard that growing up a lot. And that time seems to be an intimate time between you and the Most High. When you look at Jacob, when he was wrestling, right? He wrestled, all night? Until the morning, and that 4th watch you pointed out is what? The morning. It's starting to be what? Dusk. Or, you know, so I think that also, when you look at how he wrestled all night, and he stopped wrestling when the sun started to come up. So it almost even ties into what our circadian rhythms, right? That's when he said, I'm naming this land Peniel, is what Jacob said. And when you look into like what the pineal gland does, it secretes what melatonin, which is sleep, and goes with the circadian rhythms. I think there's something to that spiritually. You know, when we talk about how it's in charge of our sleep patterns. That's physical, but what? It's also could be spiritually sleep, spiritually awoke, in tune with the Most High, spiritually. You know, it's an intimate time at night right there. So just wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
Interesting time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's when you think about the fall, you think about the fall from the garden, and when it talks about in Romans, where it talks about, you know, all creation waiting for the coming of Messiah, the whole creation, everything. Because of the fall, everything's out of whack. Everything's out of whack, and then we have to work our way back into rightness from every level. And so there's so many things that we don't think about that, you know, could be important, but we don't know about it because everything's messed up. And so it is interesting when you think about, you know, how, you know, because at that time when their body, you know, you're still, you know, the idea of you know, receiving visions and revelations at night is interesting, but it's completely understandable because you don't have, you know, when it's during the day, you got all the stuff you're thinking about, all this stuff going on. You know, when you even could just be sitting quietly during the day, there's still like things that you're even unconsciously thinking about. But when you get into that place when it's just total stillness, you know, when you, especially at this point in time, when you think about the idea of sleeping, you don't have all of these things going on in your mind where there's distractions. Even if you just think about the boat, they was literally on a boat and there was literally waves and crashings and things going on. But think about it from kind of a spiritual standpoint, is that, you know, when we live in this life that isn't anything but crashing waves, we have to be able to get into this place of stillness, and, you know, where we're able to, you know, block out the distractions and focus on Messiah. And when you think about that idea of stillness and calmness, your body, it takes all night really to get to that place. You know, if you just go lay down and fall asleep for like 15, 20 minutes, your body didn't really kick in for real into real like sleep. It takes a while for your body to even get to that place of just all the way, just sleep. And then sometimes, depending on the things that you're doing, you know, people don't even get into that good sleep sometimes when they got different kind of issues and things going on. But saying all that is to say, the idea, I think, of, you know, being able to have those distractions and things moved away, where there's able to be a focus, you know, those things happen. You know, people, the Most High, you know, rightly so, speaks to us in dreams at night when we're quiet. And so what we need to be able to make sure and do is be able to fortify that relationship with the master, because these people, I just want to say, these people they, you know, it's a spiritual kind of a time where the Most High could speak to you, but you got these other things going on that could also speak to you also. And that's part of the superstition that they had in terms of speaking with these unknown entities, because you don't know, if you don't know who the master is, what he sounds like, what he looks like, how he operates, you can be confused and be listening to the wrong voices.
That's what happened out here.
And so that's what you have. You know, you got people out here saying that the Most High said for me to do this and that, and then they sitting there telling you it, and then but you can line up what they saying to what the scriptures say.
Yeah.
You know, well, I had a dream, I had a vision that this and that happened, but you look at what they're saying and you try to line these things up with the scripture, and it don't go. Because we have to know Messiah, we have to know the word, we have to know the character of the Most High, so that when we hear, that we're able to know that what we're hearing is in fact from the Most High, and not some night demon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so that being said, does anybody have any last questions or comments before we go ahead and, go ahead.
I do have a question about, when you was talking about how Yeshua was in the water and he was calling out and they didn't hear him. Like, how come they didn't hear him? Like, if Christ's voice is like such a thing, like, if he came in this room, we could just all party, like, it would just resonate. How come they can, like, hear it in that instance?
Well, they saw him,
Yeah.
but he wasn't speaking. They saw him over there, and because of the time, it was probably dark. If it's the fourth watch, it could have been light, but it probably was dark. And so there's water, there's crashing, there's low visibility, there's a guy walking on water. All of these things aid to the fact that, you know, the first thing you're thinking about is that Yeshua walking on the water. And so he wasn't calling to them and they wasn't hearing necessarily, but he was over there and then they didn't know exactly who it was. And so, like I was saying, is that what we have to make sure and know is that we understand what the character of the Most High is. We understand what his words would be saying, and we know that when we understand the character of the Most High, we can't be confused when we do hear his voice. We can't be tricked by someone or something pretending to be the Messiah, because we know him so well that when we can hear, his voice outside of noises and distractions, that we're able to say, ah, yes, this is the master. How can I help you? Or you ain't got nothing to do with the master, get behind me, Satan. Okay? And so at the end of the day, it's necessary for us to have the realization that the disciples have at the end, to know who the Master Yeshua is, to make sure that our relationship with him is so that he is like that shepherd, that we're able to hear and know his voice when he calls to us, and we're ready, willing, and able to do whatever it is that he has for us to be doing after. All right, so that being said, we are going to be done for now. Y'all willing, we'll be back on next Shabbat to continue with not only the annual Torah portion, but also the words of the Master. So for now, we'll say Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. All right, Shabbat Shalom.